What's good, everybody? Another hot Cooligans episode coming your way. We're recording from home today because of the schedules, a lot of stuff going on. You might hear some stuff in the background, but this is the reality of, like, you know, when we had the lockdown and we had the viral video of the toddler running into the guy's office and all that stuff. I mean, my son can't walk yet. He's only 2 months old, but anything can happen, okay? But we're back home where I'm having some plumbing issues. It's being fixed right now, but this is the world we live in. So if you hear anything, that's what's going on, okay? If you hear crying, it's probably me. So I'm excited about today's show. Welcome to the Cooligans. My name is Christian Polanco, and I'm honored to be working with this man because a couple weeks ago, Alexis got the chance. While I was on paternity leave, Alexis got the chance to work with this man, a guy who I'm a huge fan of. Obviously, you're very familiar with him if you are a fan of just any Meadowlark Media product. And part of the Lebitard family, the fanciest lad that has ever been on this program. Welcome to the show, Chris Wittyngham. What's up, man?
Not much, man. Happy to be here, and I'm really happy to be along for this ride of what this podcast recording is going to be like, because, yes, I agree. Sort of like that guest that was on that BBC World News, I think, that one time? Yeah, the baby runs in the background. That's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. I want to hear all kinds of construction noises in the background, their home repairs going on at the Polanco household. I want to hear all of it. And I don't edit this out, Producer Mike. Don't edit it out. I want to hear all of it in its full resplendence.
So, I'm gonna have my finger on the mute button from time to time.
No, leave it on. Leave it on.
So, right, I'm gonna thank you for helping me not be, self-conscious or appear unprofessional, because, especially working with you have the stereotype of being incredibly professional, incredibly buttoned up amongst a dirty sweatshirt that Stugatz is wearing. You know what I mean? You always
the same sweatshirt and the same hat. Every time.
So, I'm trying
every time I see him on camera with a new hat on, I'm like, it's a new hat. Congratulations.
So I'm trying to be on my best behavior, but there's a lot of exciting things on the way on this episode. I just want to remind people, because I had mentioned a couple days ago on our last podcast that today's episode would have Maria Sanchez of the Houston Dash, but we had to reschedule some things. We had to clearly invite the plumber to the show. So her episode will be on, her interview will be on next episode, which will be on Monday evening. So look out for that. It's a great interview with Maria Sanchez of Houston Dash in the NWSL. So look forward to that. But let's start real quick. I just got to tell Witty, I got to tell the audience about something that was really exciting this week. I got the opportunity to work with U.S. Soccer Foundation and host the Congressional Soccer Match. And even, and it's a little bit somber, but I was very excited to be there. But one of the only reason I was even there was because I was introduced by people from the U.S. Soccer Foundation by Grant Wall. And it's just one of those examples of, after he passed, we got so many stories, and we heard Witty on the podcast as well talk about just so many kind and good things that he did for people in this industry. And this is just one example of that. So every story I'm about to tell you, I just want to thank Grant, because none of it would have happened, and it was one of the wildest experiences I've ever gotten to have. So the U.S. Soccer Foundation, an awesome organization that really focused on it came about, I don't know if you know this, Witty, it came about after the 94 World Cup. When the U.S. got the 94 World Cup, FIFA basically said, okay, you can have it, but you're going to have to create an organization to help grow the game in the country. And that is what U.S. Soccer Foundation is. They build mini pitches. They help grow the game in the country, for underprivileged communities, stuff like that. So that was why this game was happening. So it was a Congressional Soccer Match. They do it every year. I think this is like the 7th or 8th iteration. And literally the final game is Republicans versus Democrats. They also do a staffers versus lobbyists game, and they do like a embassy game, which I wasn't.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. But so there were 3 matches. So
you could have like a mini World Cup in DC. That'd be amazing.
100%.
An embassy World Cup. That'd be amazing.
It was super cool. The first I had got there. I was working with Jillian Sakovitz, your colleague at MLS, and we were emceeing, kind of joking around and doing interviews with some of the players, some of the politicians, stuff like that. So we got there for the Staffers versus Lobbyists game. That was the first one, and Lobbyists won that game, as they usually do, right? The Lobbyists.
I don't feel like I'd want to be playing for Team Lobbyists. There's a certain like evil characterization behind that. It's like, yeah, let's go lobbying.
And that's the up the lobbyists, that was sort of the being there. The tone of the game, it was way more lighthearted than when I was posting, being like the Staffers versus the Lobbyists 2-1. You know what I mean? It just has a much more sinister kind of tone when you're just like reading the score line and things like that. But I was talking to some of the lobbyists, and the lobbyists were just like, hey, we used to be Staffers, but we didn't make enough money, so this is where the money's at.
Oh God. Just completely dispensing with like the good of working in government, just like, I wanted some money. The money's in lobbying.
You learn very quickly that it's the reality of American politics exists right here on the pitch. It is very much present. Where even a lot of the lobbyists and the staffers work together every day. I was even asking them, I'm like, hey man, is it more difficult to get a bill past, one of these staffers, or is it, or when they're marking you, can you get past? You know what I mean? And and they were like, it's easier here. I can't. Yeah. The bills are a little bit tougher to pass. But
since you started this, all I've been thinking about is coming up with like a song for the lobbyists, like lobbies on fire, your Congress is terrified, lobbies on fire, like this, something like that. Yeah. What would the songs of the lobbyists be?
I mean, I was initially just thinking like the Star Wars Empire music. But I don't know if that would
everyone in the crowd going da 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 da.
I don't know. Like that was working this job is also I'm a stand-up comic. I clearly want to make as many jokes as possible, but I'm also not trying to like mess up the bag either.
Right, exactly. Right? So, or like put your foot in it. Yeah.
So it was a healthy balance of trying to make a couple jokes and stuff like that, but not be too partisan. That's really
That's true.
That was the main thing. And so there were a couple things that happened to me. I before the congressional match, I was kicking the ball around with Senator. I think he was the only senator there, but Senator Todd Young of Indiana, a Republican of Indiana, and he was. I was doing keepy uppies with him. Which is it's a sentence I never thought I would ever utter in my life.
Does he have soccer previous? Like, was he good?
Yes, I think he played in either high school or college. He was pretty good. He was doing some like back heels. We have a video where we're showing right now of him doing some back heels, kicking the ball.
Yeah, according to his wiki page, he won a state soccer championship in 1990.
Look at that. You see, and he said that he wasn't playing in the game simply because he was like, my knees, I've been carrying this party too long. And that was literally as I was kicking the ball with him. I don't know anything about him, and I was just like, please, man, just don't be a monster. Please don't be a monster. Every pass back and forth, I'm like, please, I hope you're not a monster. And then I looked him up, and he is like, he's not like a MAGA guy. But he's a more staunch conservative that most Democrats probably do not like or whatever. But I'm like, all right. I mean, that's what I grew up with. Just a nice, conservative.
You believe in fiscal conservatism,
exactly.
that sort of thing.
They're subtle with it.
Right, exactly.
so that was fun. Yeah. And then the game itself. So I just wanted. This is where we'll wrap up here with this. The Democrats had Eric Swalwell, the Republican from California. We're looking at a photo.
Democrat from California.
The Democrat from California. We're looking at a photo. I took a photo with him. He was a very nice man.
He was in like the 19-person field for the presidency.
Yes,
when Joe Biden got he was in, like weren't there like 2 debates one night, or there was like one time where Eric Swalwell really like took his hack and didn't work out for him.
Exactly. And but he played goalkeeper for the Democrats, and he was pretty good. I was genuinely
so if the Republicans if the representatives and like there weren't that many representatives and weren't that many senators, who sort of filled out the squads?
So it was some former MLS players. Chris Pontius played. I think he was on the Dems, if I'm not mistaken. Aleko Skandarian, former DC United legend, also works at MLS. He was interesting. He was supposed to play for the Democrats, and then he was arriving late, and the coach of the Democrats was Tony Sane, legendary USMNT guy in Minnesota, and he since he was a coach and he was like friends with Aleko, and he was annoyed that he was late. He was like, "Oh, you're on the red team," and when he was literally on the sheet for the Democrats, and Aleko was the best player on the Republicans team because he is Aleko's been on the show. He's a good friend. He is a guy, and I'm sure you've encountered this, where former MLS players can't, or former athletes in general, they can't shut off the competitive. Doesn't matter if it's a charity match
for sure
or anything. And there was a moment there. Josh Norman, the cornerback from he was also playing
formerly of Washington. Yeah,
right. He was he played in the first half as forward, and he is an NFL player, and he is not built to play soccer necessarily. He's a pretty big dude. But in the second half he played goalkeeper. There was a back pass. It got to him from a Democratic player. He picked it up with his hands. The ref called an indirect free kick.
Wow.
So this is the ball's on the right outside the 6-yard box.
Was there like a 10? Oh, God. We're getting into politics now. Did the Republicans build the wall on the goal line?
The Democrats, they tried to filibuster this indirect free kick, and they did all they could to stop it. But I forgot who. I think it was Chris Pontius that initially maybe touched the ball. I forgot who it was. But Aleko Eskandarian. And I have a clip. We're showing the clip right now because this was filmed. Aleko Eskandarian. He took the opportunity. I thought he was gonna try to tap it in, get it under some folks, because there's literally the entire Democratic team is lining up inside the goal to prevent Aleko from scoring, and Aleko rockets it. He hits the ball from 6 yards out. It must have been like 70, 80 miles per hour. He hit this ball so hard, and luckily he did not hit anybody. He literally upper 90, roof of the net. It was just a great shot, but I couldn't believe that he took the shot to begin with. It was surreal. The Republicans ended up winning, and then the other representative, Dan Crenshaw, was on the Republican team, and I don't know his soccer history, but he did play. He looked like he knew definitely what he was doing. My man played a bit aggressively though.
That's not surprising.
I mean, seconds in, Crenshaw got, he just set the tone for the game. And that I don't think slide tackling was allowed, but he got one in there. And so he was also pretty good. Definitely played with a lot of intensity. But overall, this congressional match was pretty incredible. I believe that they told us it was the first time they had Jillian and I were the announcers or whatever, or in stadium announcers, and it was the first time they did that, and it was great. It was just like we could voice the absurdity and the craziness of the actual game. So it's super entertaining.
Forgive me for interrupting, but I just pulled up an article about Dan Crenshaw. Apparently, after the game, because he has a glass eye. He's sort of known for wearing an eye patch. And apparently he took out the glass eye and said, quote, "The refs have 2 eyeballs, but they don't use them, so I'm just going to give them one of mine."
I didn't know he said that.
Wow. That's incredible.
I did see he was standing next to me, and I thought he would be wearing the eye patch, but he did not wear it. And yes, you could see that he did not have a glass eye while he was playing. And also weirdly, he was playing without his glass eye, and then I saw another guy on the Democratic team playing with full glasses, not like the not like
the goggles around that, just like the glasses I'm wearing right now.
Yeah, just regular old pushing him up every time he was trying to get the ball. I'm like, oh, bro, that Pretty, not a super professional game. But super entertaining. So I just say that to I'm sure they're going to be doing this every year. Fans need to go to this. There were a fair amount. There were probably like 2,000-3,000 people there, roughly. But this should be a well attended. The tickets are free. It was really, really cool. So recommend it for.
I would love for there to be supporter stands for both.
Dude.
For both teams, just like the capos leading Democrat chants and leading Republican chants down the other end, and you're not singing anymore. You're not singing anymore.
There's so much opportunity for this amazing banter.
Yeah.
So please, if you're listening to this, that is a call for everybody to make sure to attend this game. This would be so wild. Okay. All right. We let's move on and go through a couple things going through this week. Obviously, we'll get to MLS. Let's start with Europe real quick because Jude Bellingham was officially announced as a Real Madrid player. I don't know if you saw the comments from Tony Kroos about basically. I guess they were. I think he just said this on his podcast, but he essentially said, "Oh, we had a player who we paid a lot to, and he rested throughout his time here." Essentially, kind of throwing Eden Hazard under the bus, and some people sort of took it the wrong way, but also he's not 100% wrong. But now that Eden Hazard is not returning, so I think the idea was to sort of say that to maybe motivate Jude Bellingham, implying all right, you have to come here to work, and we have to appreciate him. But Jude Bellingham going to Real Madrid. I think my first question: does this affect? And we'll talk about Mbappe. But does this have any effect? Is it more likely Mbappe to come, or less likely because they're paying a lot of money, obviously, to bring him to Real Madrid?
Yeah, I think in this window it might be tough. But it also seems like Real Madrid have been sort of keeping their powder dry for 2 or 3 really big ones for a while now.
Right.
And, Erling Haaland was certainly the first one. They clearly went all in for him, and Manchester City ended up getting him. But this is sort of what Real Madrid do. They try and get the star talent, the big up-and-coming, best 11 in the world caliber talent. And so I think they're always going to make that push. They're not going to make that push for all of them. But I also kind of wonder with Mbappe's contract situation, sort of what that fee is even going to be. Because it seems like if he forces his way out, and he could just as easily say, I'm going to turn down that option next year, and I'm not coming back, and you're going to lose me for free, if maybe Real Madrid have some genuine leverage, because he'll probably end up saying, I only want to go to Real Madrid. That's sort of his boyhood dream. Right. So I wonder how much money it will cost. Obviously, the salary will be exorbitant, but if those are the only 2 transfers that they make in this window, Real Madrid will be just fine. They have, I think they probably need to start beefing up their defense a little bit. They've kind of gone the free transfer route with the likes of Rudiger and the likes of Alaba. They probably need another big center back to add into that team. But if they leave this window and all they've done is Mbappe and Bellingham, then that will be a very good transfer window, and that probably will about fit into their budget, because they've obviously been pretty conservative with money in recent times. For as much as they obviously are heralded for being the big spending clubs, as they've been rebuilding their stadium, they've done a fairly decent job of remaining competitive while not making that huge transfer really since Hazard.
Yeah, I think in La Liga, they lost the league by how many points? I don't remember exactly.
It was a fair bit.
It was a fair amount. So that was really the only place where
10 points they lost.
10 points. Okay, so relatively for that league, that double digits is kind of a lot, and you wouldn't necessarily say that Barcelona are in some great financial, that they sorted out all their financial issues. They just had a little.
That's why Lionel Messi's in Miami.
It's clearly the what is it, like the priority for Real Madrid seemed to me was that they thought they could probably win another Champions League, and obviously they just came across finally the buzzsaw that Manchester City was always supposed to be for the last 5 years.
But that said, that they only accrued 78 points. In La Liga, I mean, you go back to the Mourinho-Guardiola days when the two of them were slugging it out. Each of them would get 100 points a season.
Right.
And Barcelona ended on 88, and Real Madrid ended on 78. They're not They're not that strong, at least week in, week out. That's the thing that I don't really understand about Real Madrid, and I think it's sort of why their player-dependent strategy sometimes confuses me, because for me, their whole thing is we get big players, and that's what we do. But they've never really gone about building a philosophy in terms of this is who we are. This is, we build this particular style of play. It's built to be better than the best teams. And so you see them go into a semifinal against Manchester City and get run over. And you kept waiting for them in that semifinal second leg to turn it on and be Real Madrid and be a team that can be lethal and incredibly quick on the counter. But they didn't have any attacking ideas for the whole of that second leg. And I just sort of wonder, yes, Bellingham will help. But they already had a great midfield, and they've already got, Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Bellingham coming through. They should be a spectacular team that every single week is destroying teams in La Liga. And it felt like every Saturday or Sunday afternoon, I have on FOTMob, the app, you get notifications in, and I felt like every week they were 1-0 down after 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
They don't bring it every week. And that's the thing that's surprising to me. They can always summon a performance on a big Champions League night, but for whatever reason, I just don't think that they're consistent performers enough. And I think that's part of what Toni Kroos was probably talking about with Bellingham. You've got to bring this every single week because our level hasn't been good enough.
Exactly, and they also allowed Tati Castellanos to put 4 on them in one game, which is like huge for. For Girona, huge for Tati Castellanos, obviously an NYCFC player on loan, so everybody was just dunking on them like, yo, an MLS player just put 4 on you. It's pretty embarrassing. But even in the Champions League, in that game against Girona, like the ominous sort of kind of power that you sort of see from Real Madrid when they play almost any La Liga team where most teams clearly fear them and they play with this level of confidence. There were several games last season where that just was not present, and it was no more apparent than in the game against Manchester City, where there's whether home or away, there's rarely an instance where Real Madrid can't figure stuff out, where Vinicius can't kind of get by, and he couldn't get by Kyle Walker.
He couldn't complete 5 passes in a row. Like, never mind actually threaten Manchester City.
It was surreal. There was just a wild lack of confidence. So I don't know if it begs the question about anything going on sort of behind the scenes or whatever. But it was definitely a rough season. And also Vinicius Jr. dealing with monkey chants, so many games, and all this other stuff. So it was, disappointing to say the least. Okay. So Mbappe, I want to talk a bit more about that. If he is, how likely do you think he's? I don't know if I guess he's leaving or not, but maybe the process right now, because he sent a letter to confirm that he is not re-signing, and the PSG ownership were like, how could he send this letter? Why would he? He could have just knocked on my door and just and it's like, well, there's probably millions of dollars at stake, and he's just trying to be as professional as possible. The saga, because I feel like we get this the last 2 years. We've had this of is he staying or is he going? He ended up renewing for a whole ton of money, but now just simply the fact that this drama is going on between them. It feels like this is a moment where the ball is on PSG's court to really make a decision, whether obviously let him go for free or transfer him. But do you think they force that? Are they tired of dealing with Mbappe?
Well, I don't see how you can be tired of dealing with Mbappe when it's sort of entirely of your own creation. Everything at Paris Saint-Germain is the fault of the fact that over the course of 10 years, they never built a culture, an identity, anything. They have not built anything. And while, I might sound like an overly sensitive Manchester City fan here, but people say all the time, oh, it's money. All you have is the money. And no, it's not. Manchester City have actually gone about trying to build something. Yes, the money is a huge part of it, but Paris Saint-Germain and Chelsea prove that you can spend all the money in the world and not actually create anything. PSG has created nothing other than shirts that sell. The Jordan brand, fashionable jerseys is about all they have as a club. And so when you have nothing upon which to build, you are entirely reliant on these star players, and these star players who you basically say, if you want to F off the league every week because, you don't want to play away at, I guess you'd probably want to play away at Marseille. I'm trying to think of away at Nantes, or away at Angers, or away at like all these. You know what? It's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll win the league anyway. Just come up for these big Champions League. No, you can't actually build anything that way. And so for me, you can't really get that angry. I mean, I guess you can because you're Qatari and you think that everything should go your way. Yeah. But, you can't actually get angry when things don't go your way. So my guess is they'll probably let him go and they'll try and spin that they're starting a new project with only building around Parisian talent or whatever. And they'll get rid of Neymar too, which is probably what they should do. But I find them to be such a basket case of a club. Like they're not serious. They haven't been serious for 10 years. And I cannot believe that they're now going to get to this point when they had 3 of the very best attackers in the world, 3 box office players, and they're not going to have done anything with them. And honestly, I'm as disappointed for Mbappe because this is probably among, which is funny to say about a player who was a penalty away from winning 2 World Cups in a row, but among the worst possible timelines for him from a club standpoint. When he bursts onto the scene at Monaco when they beat Manchester City in the round of 16 of the Champions League, and go, all right, where's this guy's career going? This is among the worst possible versions of it. Just sort of anonymous, week in, week out. We don't watch him play every week. Champions League nights, he hasn't really delivered that much. He's had incredible international tournaments, but at club level, it's been kind of meh from him, which is not at all what it should be. He should be at a big-time club delivering big-time trophies week in, week out.
100%. One thing, René, un favor. La música, si la puede bajar.
Well, the guy's playing music? That's incredible. You're recording a podcast, and the guy is putting music on. That's insane. What kind of music was it?
It was merengue, bro.
That is painfully on brand. That's so good.
I mean, that's normally playing in my house. So it's so good.
Please have that on in the background during my PSG rant that I just did.
Okay, I mean, this is it, bro. We warned you up top. Okay, now I feel like I've been doing this the last few days since the Messi news. I'm like, anybody that hops on a mic on this show, especially someone obviously very connected with the Miami area and obviously an announcer for MLS, but Messi, bro. Tell me, Witty, how should I be feeling, bro? Tell me.
Well, I think my sort of primary feeling right now is curious in the sense that, like, all right, so what happens from here? Because I think a lot of people talk about some of the shorter term gains, namely Instagram followers that have come Inter Miami's way as a result of this Lionel Messi transfer. But I'm sort of thinking bigger. And it was interesting in sort of hearing, people talk about like, oh, well, David Beckham only did this in MLS when he came. But David Beckham essentially announced a new era in Major League Soccer. You saw a number of investors come into the league, a number of expansion teams come into the league. They saw what happened when David Beckham showed up and thought, well, there's some potential here. And now, 16 years later, there's 16 new clubs in MLS since he joined. There's this entire infrastructure is built enormously ever since. And so, yeah, there are all these sort of cotton candy, the tickets are more expensive, and there are more Instagram followers, and that's cool, and that's great. But what's the actual big stuff that's going to happen as a result of this? And that, I think, sort of remains to be seen. There was an article in The Athletic this week about kind of how Miami are thinking over some of the hotels that they're staying in and the travel. That's the sort of stuff that I'm intrigued by. Is it going to be a raising of the level, the raising of standards, not just with Miami, but with all of the teams? What happens when he goes to teams that play on artificial turf? Is he going to play in those games? And if there's a big headline that says Lionel Messi leaves a bunch of fans wanting because he doesn't want to play on artificial turf, that's a big deal, and it'll make a lot of teams question the surfaces that they play on. So it's that sort of stuff that I'm interested in. The reverberations. What is the big change that happens from here? How big does it become? Obviously, from a personal standpoint, I could not be more ecstatic, both in terms of Inter Miami. Obviously, I'm a day one fan. Yeah. Obviously, the club hasn't been around that long, but I think I'm like season ticket holder number 1. So that's incredible from a professional standpoint. Obviously, the fact that we work for MLS Season Pass, we all want it to go. We want people to subscribe. We want people to jump on board, and it seems like people will now for the run into this season. So that obviously we're enormously excited about. But I am genuinely curious about sort of how Messi raises the standards, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be by bringing in a bunch of other stars, but obviously raises the profile of the league. And do other teams go out and say, we don't want to go get Messi, we don't want to go get some other similarly aged star, but maybe go out and get some big name player from another team, and that player is willing to listen because Lionel Messi came. I think it's that sort of stuff that I'm interested in.
Witty, but actually what I do want to know is, who's calling that first Messi game? Are you putting a name in the hat? Do you have to fight Taylor Twellman for the opportunity? How does it get divvied up?
I have no idea. I have no intent on fighting Taylor Twellman. I feel like Taylor Twellman will be there, and I hope he has a great time, and I hope he does his usual magnificent work on the game. But it's been a funny parlor game from within the MLS Season Pass announcing community going, well, it's funny because, the stadium is literally a 20-minute drive from my house.
Right.
And I feel like I will only be seeing it in passing. I will be waving at it and like, all right, that seems, have a nice time.
You work for MLS, but they're going to be like, yeah, get a subscribe. That's how you're going to see it.
Yeah. Well, I do have season tickets, and also I have tickets, and it's worked out for a few of the away games. So there's one in LA that's on a Sunday, and so I'll probably be able to go to that. And there's one in Orlando that's on a Sunday, so I might be able to go as a fan to a couple of those.
Okay.
But yeah, that'll probably be as close. Well, look, obviously I hope, and if anyone from the MLS Season Pass production team or the bosses are listening, I'd happily do it. But yeah, we'll see how.
I want
to
say this, and I want to give you some praise, because obviously there's been a lot of matches I've watched, and I'm hearing you on the call and on US Open Cup as well. But there is, this has been a big transition in your life. Obviously, leaving Le Batard show and working there, daily, to focusing on your being an announcer for MLS. And you know what? I gotta say, I see the focus and the effort, the energy. Witty, you are becoming the a more common voice, where I'm like, I hope Witty is on this call, or whenever there's a big goal and on a game that you're on, I'm like, this energy is starting to feel like this is what the voice of American soccer is supposed to sound like. So I'm loving it.
That's very high praise, man. Thank you. Yeah, obviously, I'm pouring. I always poured a ton into it, and basically had no other life. It was Le Batard show, my announcing life, and that was about it. But now, I'm really dedicating a bunch of my time and energy into not just obviously the work, getting ready, but trying to what you mentioned was sort of redoubling your efforts on making sure that you hit those moments really well, and thinking about it. It's weird to sort of spend your week thinking about, all right, if this happens in the game, then I'll say that, and actually putting some intentionality behind words. And it's completely different than doing something like this, where I feel like you and I are just having a conversation, and people will be like, oh, do you have an announcer voice? And I say no, but now I kind of say yes, because there is no other format, I guess, in which people talk, in which you're being so purposeful about what you're saying, right? You've put thought into everything that you said. You put a bunch of this work. And so, yeah, I sound different because I'm not that purposeful in other bits of my life. When I'm having dinner with friends, I'm just talking. When I'm hanging out with you on a podcast, I'm just talking. That's prepared talking. It's completely different. Yeah. And I'm loving it, man. I'm really enjoying it.
No, it's great. And it's this, even MLS announcing oh, these are the assignments, and these are the people going to be calling. Even the, who was getting, I forgot who was the call on the Zelarayango?
It was Jen Hildreth.
Jen Hildreth. Okay. Yeah. And clearly, Midwestern, you betcha, you betcha in the call. And easily, when European people hear it, they're like, oh my God, American, why would they say this? But then I hear it, and I'm like, this feels like I'm eating a hot dog. You know what I mean? It feels, I'm like...
in Chicago. Yeah, you're eating a Chicago dog. Yeah.
This feels like, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's a little bit different, but it's ours. I love the authenticity of it. And MLS doesn't need to sound like any other league, because what we're used to sort of getting is like, if we're watching soccer, it has to be with an English accent. Otherwise, regardless of what league it is or what state the game is being played in, that was sort of the standard. And I think you and the rest of the crew are giving MLS its like own brand that I don't think we've had throughout the entire time throughout the league.
Well, I think it's interesting because you mentioned sort of the way that Jen called that. I think it's when you say authentic, it's authentic to the person, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting about American soccer culture, is that to the person is vastly different from person to person, even from people that share a similar accent, right? Because there are people that came about watching soccer in completely different ways. Like I will confess, like, the first league that I started watching a lot of was the Premier League. And so you listen to a lot of British guys, and while you're not completely trying to copy what they do, there's a lot of the lingo and the jargon that just sort of comes through, and you've absorbed the game in a certain way. But then obviously I was also watching a ton of MLS, and you watch a lot of BN Sports, and guys like Phil Shane and Andres Cordero and those sorts of guys do their commentary in different ways. And so the American game gets to be so diverse because it's sort of not of one thing, right? English football culture comes from one place, the Premier League or the former First Division, and the ways in which you consume the game is almost entirely through the prism of the Premier League. Whereas in the U.S., you can be a Mexican American that has only ever watched Liga MX, and so you want the game to be called in that way. And to be fair, I've listened to a fair bit of Liga MX commentary and Univision commentary, and maybe that might have influenced me in other ways too. So I think that's the interesting bit, is that there are 14, 15 people that are part of the MLS Season Pass project, and they all came about the way that they call the games in completely different ways. Yeah. And I think that's what's interesting, is that they sort of develop their own voice in their own way, and it's not as homogenous than maybe in other countries like in Italy, where everyone who calls games in Italy grew up watching Serie A and Juve and Milan and Inter and all those clubs, and they know precisely how the Italian culture works. And then you slowly branch out a little bit when it comes time for international tournaments or Champions League. But American culture is not one thing. American soccer culture is not one thing, and so each person can kind of go about their job differently.
Agree, man. And that's what it is. As soon as Messi starts playing some games, as soon as we get the call on his first goal, we know that the entire world will be watching, and they will be paying attention to the call, and they will be criticizing it, okay? Doesn't matter what. It could be the best goal in the world. I mean, it might be Taylor and Jake, and that the criticism will be there. So the thing I tell these people all the time, I'm like, y'all need to chill, okay? Y'all need to chill with an ice cold Coors Light, Witty. That is the move.
Wow, that is a professional segue. Go on, Christian.
Because if you want to chill while you're watching MLS Season Pass and you're watching Messi just, it probably humiliate the Colorado Rapids. I know you're going to be tuning into those games. You can do it with an ice cold Coors Light, because and the thing that is so helpful and so useful, we're speaking of Colorado, the mountains. Those mountains are right on the can, and they turn what color do they turn?
They turn blue when it's cold enough to be ready to drink.
Okay, so they turn cold. They turn blue. So it's cold enough to drink. It's hot enough for Messi to go. In the mile high city and embarrass the Colorado Rapids. That is all the direction you need. So when you choose to chill, pair your plans with an ice cold Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/Cooligans. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
The Colorado Rapids should be the Colorado Blue Mountains.
Okay.
They should rebrand, just fully lean into the Coors Light branding.
Cronky, you heard him. You change it up. I mean, you barely pay attention to the team now, so why not? Just have a big old change. The Nuggets. This was an interesting thing, right? The Nuggets won the NBA Finals. Pour one out for Miami. I'm a Knicks fan, so I'm couldn't have been happier.
Your favorite team in these playoffs was not the Heat.
I was just yelling. You know what? Jokic plays the game the right way. I don't know. I don't know where that came from, but it happened, right? And Stan Kroenke was getting a lot of heat because he's won with the Rams, right? He's won with, obviously the Nuggets, and there was like what other team? It was some other team that won. But obviously he owned Arsenal. Arsenal, bottled it. We know that. But
the Avalanche also won.
Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
And that was the weird thing is that on a lot of the infographics that a lot of people were making, they just completely left out that he owns the Colorado Rapids. Why?
And they won in 2010. Yeah. I saw that. Like even the local news station, they ran a graphic of major Denver sports championships and didn't include the Rapids. I have to be honest. I saw another thing too. Like there was some baseball account that was like the only major sports league that's on right now is MLB, and it's like what does major even mean? What does that mean? Like, okay, so MLS, they put, 20 to 25,000 in every stadium across the country with 29 teams in the league. Is that not major? What qualifies as major?
Right. Yeah, that was
the definition from 1970. Ridiculous.
That was a tweet from somebody.
Baseball. Get over yourself.
John Boy Media, which is that they do like fun kind of recaps.
They're big baseball people. I get it, but
and it's like
enough.
I'm Dominican. I'll enjoy a nice baseball game here and there, but I'm not like delusional to just be like enough to just be like, this is literally the only sport happening right now. There's nothing else going on in the world. There's nothing else anybody should be paying attention to. But to me, it screams an insecurity when you talk about how your sport or your league is the only important thing happening right now. It's just like, all right, you clearly have the blinders on, and you're kind of, I call it like rage farming. They know that the soccer fans are gonna ignore the sound, everybody. Actually,
your sink appears to be working.
I'm actually just peeing into a bucket right now.
It's insecurity, but like there's a couple more things. There's one, there's like a please like my sport, which is common. Which, by the way, soccer fans are guilty of every once in a while. There's definitely a please like my sport crowd within the soccer group, so we can't completely judge, but there's definitely that. And particularly like baseball's having a bit of a resurgence. The pitch clock has made things very different this year. The games don't take forever anymore. So it's like come back to baseball, everyone. It's great now. But there's also like a certain amount of and you notice this sometimes. I saw there was a clip that went viral of Chris Mad Dog Russo on First Take this week. Why is everyone going nuts about Messi? No one cares about that dopey league, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. When you hear someone in the sports media say, nobody cares about X, it means two things. Number one, I don't care about X. And number two, the reason why I don't care about X is because I don't want to learn something new.
Right.
And so there's a bunch of people that are baseball people, and they've been baseball people for as long as they've lived, and they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they, as sports generalists or sports fans, have to embrace a new sport. Well, I gotta do something new. I already have so much on my sporting docket.
Right.
I don't want to add it. I have to learn about soccer. I have to learn about tactics. I have to learn about all this. I don't want to. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dismiss its relevance to American culture to the point where I don't even have to. I don't feel guilty about the fact that I haven't gotten into soccer when it's coming. It's coming, people. Right. Soccer's coming.
I think those are kind theories. I'm more of a conspiracy theorist. I'm like,
okay,
that dog is in the pocket of big football and big baseball.
he's going to be playing for the lobbyists in the congressional game next year.
He is a mouthpiece for the propagandists in these institutions.
He does work for MLB Network.
I could see. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's that sinister per se, but there is just a. Like I said, I think Dan talks about this all the time with essentially accusing Stephen A. Smith and Skip as basically destroying all of sports media and changing the landscape, but the similar to the baseball tweet from John Boy, where it's the getting you upset is the point. It leads to engagement. It leads, I think where we are when it comes to just internet decorum is the shiny, the newness of Instagram and Twitter of we're just sharing ideas and blah, blah, blah. That's over. And now it's literally bro, if you ain't saying anything to piss somebody off, nobody's listening to you.
Yeah, you will not make the algorithm unless you've pissed somebody off.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you tweet something, the blue checks right under your comments will be the most problematic things you've ever seen.
Oh, God, the blue checks. God, the replies are so bad now.
It is quite the nightmare. So, I do want to talk a little bit about I don't even know how long we've been recording. I don't know where we are in time.
There's been like 3 interruptions for the listener for homework related things.
A 90-hour podcast. We'll cut whatever we need to cut. But Major League Soccer this season, we're midway through. Obviously, Witty, you've been there for obviously covering this season in depth. And if we take a look at, I don't know, a couple things that, I don't know, maybe surprise you in this season. I know, at least for me as an NYCFC fan, to see NYCFC not even in the playoff picture and sitting in 13th in the Eastern Conference, it hurts because this team is just, I'm not, like in the inaugural season, I expect, this is what we sort of all expected, and it was difficult. I was at the Red wedding, the Red Bull wedding. I was there, and it was, I always have that scar on me. But there's been a lot of improvement after that. But NYCFC, they just, whether it's just simply not having a striker, whether it's, some of the roster decisions, it's been difficult for me to see them play the way they play. But what do you think about that? And then also, what has been surprising you this season?
I think on NYCFC, they're probably a club like other clubs, like Seattle, I think has used this mechanism a lot, where first half of the season might not be great, but the transfer window that opens in the summer is probably the better window to do business, both buying and selling. And so I do think that they're probably leaving some of that powder dry for the summer, and they'll probably make some moves that'll make them a stronger team for the run into the year. I'm still surprised, though, when it comes to New York City, that at the very least, the one thing you can rely on them for was that they would make their baseball field advantage tell. Right. That they know how to play at Yankee Stadium, they know how to play at Citi Field, and for every other team, it's a significant adjustment. And I had Inter Miami in the playoffs last year, away at NYCFC in Citi Field, and it just, they never were really able to figure it out. It's a difficult thing to go and do. So the fact that they aren't even winning home games. I remember towards the end of last year, they were so good at Yankee Stadium that whenever they played there, they were enormous favorites. It'd be like minus 250, minus 300 favorites at Yankee Stadium, and that's unheard of in Major League Soccer. Usually the parity dictates that there really aren't that big of favorites, but they're so good there, and they know how to play there so well. But so the fact that advantage isn't even telling right now, I think is a big concern. But I think they're definitely a team that will strengthen in the summer window. They'll bring players in, and I think that they'll be fine.
I told people all the time, the last 3 years, any friends that were interested in getting tickets or interested in going to a game, I'm like, hey, look, if you go to an NYCFC home game, you're probably going to see them win. There was
and score quite a few goals as well.
Yeah, there was definitely a streak of I almost pretty much attended almost every game, every home game, and there was just such a long streak where I just never saw them lose. Even if they drew, I was like, man, this doesn't sit right with me. Why are they drawing?
Yeah,
they were that good. Anything? Any surprises otherwise this season? And I'll also want to ask about what your favorite game that you've called this season has been for you. So you can think about that while you're answering that question.
So I think in terms of surprises, I'd have to start with Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati were good, and some people were tipping them for the Supporter Shield, but I'm still surprised that they've been this good because I kind of look at the squad, and last year's team I think is probably a slightly better team. I know that the Miazga joined late in the season, and he allowed them to improve defensively at center back, and Wobodo joined midseason. So I think the team that finished last year, because they had informed Brenner, and even I thought Brandon Vasquez was better last year than he's been so far this year, and yet they just figure out ways to win games, and that. I think it's one of those things that I sometimes have difficulty wrapping my head around in this league sometimes is the teams that actually succeed at that level, because you can point to like when LAFC, set the points record a few years ago, you got it. You turned on their every game and you're like, okay, this team is awesome. And they rip teams apart. But I just don't I don't have that same feeling about Cincinnati, where I can tell why they're that much better. And honestly, like, part of that is because I've seen them in person once this year, and they struggled a bit in that game. They played a Philadelphia Union team that was rotating, and their whole goal was to kill the game, and they did so successfully for like 65 minutes. So I haven't really seen them at their very best in person, and it's tough just to sort of catch up, particularly in Eastern time zone games, because they're all happening when you're either working or getting ready to work. So I think I'm watching out for Cincinnati, not in terms of I think they're frauds or anything. I think they're a really good team, but in sort of identifying why, I think is probably the biggest thing. And to answer your question about the best game that I've watched this year, I'm sort of going through the list here. Honestly, I was in New England a couple weeks ago. They played Chicago, and that game finished 3-3. And at the end of it, I sort of looked at Lori Lindsay, who I was doing the game with, going, what was that? That was crazy. Because, like, Chicago bossed the game for 35 minutes. Jordan Shaqiri, I think, turned in his best performance of the year. And then within 3 minutes, it was 2-2. It was like, what just happened? Chicago were cruising in this game. And it finished 3-3. So that game was really cool. I also got to call the game where San Jose played LAFC at the NFL stadium where the 49ers play. So it was kind of like, it was the first time probably since college, and I've called a game from an NFL stadium, and obviously all the trappings of being in a venue that big were amazing. So those would probably be and also San Jose scored a late winner in that one. So that was a really good game. So yeah, I've had some really good ones this year, where you sort of like get off the air going, wow, that was genuine high top drawer entertainment.
Yeah, there've been a couple 3-3 like wild game. I mean, Atlanta just had one. Charlotte had one against Seattle. The New England one as well. Before I forget, we're talking about Cincinnati. Lucho Acosta has announced that he's going to be getting American citizenship. And
he's applying for American citizenship.
But it looks like it's being somewhat expedited. I think U.S. Soccer is like, hey, this guy,
let's put a letter of recommendation in for this lad. He's quite good. Man,
American as apple pie. Oh, Lucho Acosta, we all know him. We gotta get it. But this idea, I think it sent USMNT Twitter into a little bit of a frenzy because Lucho Acosta, is he just an absolute guaranteed lock starter if he's eligible and if he gets the call up?
I don't know. I think it sort of depends, and this is interesting to me because I think he theoretically plays a position that Gio Reyna would occupy, which is that sort of number 10 position. But also, I cannot remember the U.S. ever having a player like Lucho Acosta. No. Just in terms of the way that he plays the game, where it's about buzzing about from the 10, and your idea is to create for everybody, and just sort of have that sort of very tricky skill in and around the ball and in tight areas. And so, for me, I don't even know how he would fit. Like, I don't know. If you bring him into the team, the U.S. has never played with a player like him before. And so, how do you even reconfigure the team? Is it about bringing on a player like him in the last half hour of a game when you need someone to create something, or are you kind of building a system around him? That midfield was sort of built around McKennie, Musa, and Adams, who are none of those guys are tricky, technical, creative players. Yunus Musa is incredible technically, but he's not really like in that same mold of like playing in a number 10 role and creating the game and not really doing a ton of defensive work. I think the defensive aspect of things is fascinating. So I find in general, having a player like him to be like, what do you even do? The probably closest facsimile, I'd guess, would probably be a player like Benny Feilhaber back in the day. But even him, like, they go about the game in completely different ways. So I'm fascinated to see, like, if he becomes eligible, how a manager would sort of fit a system around him, because he's sort of unlike anything the U.S. have ever had before. Yeah,
it would weirdly, like, I don't know, throw a wrench into, like, what Gregg Berhalter kind of built with this roster. Definitely, and he's not a young guy, and then if you think about the 2026 World Cup, how old would he be? I think he would definitely be in his mid-30s by then. It would be...
Yeah, he's 29 now, so he'll probably be like 32 by then or something like that.
Right. Lucho would kind of... would introduce this, like, confusion, almost like we know he's an obviously great player, and then it's just like, but how do we make it work? He sort of reminds me of, like, Giovinco, but like it's just his stature, and that's one of the main things of, like, we've just never had really a player that, like, small, right? Because Americans are always like, we're always thinking about athleticism and height and strength and blah blah blah, and we've always sort of looked past players that are just small technical players. Like,
we've never had an Argentinian number 10 before, mostly because we've never had an Argentinian play for the national team.
How we missed the Argentinians playing on the American national team. So it would be surreal. I know Pablo Mauro had asked him about it, Lucho Acosta, and he said he would accept the call up, and he said that he would, he had hopes of being called to the Argentina national team. But and this is like his words. He said once he saw the World Cup, he was like, I'm done. I'm past it. They're never gonna call me. He's like, yeah. But they're like,
unfortunately, that as long as Alexis McAllister exists, I probably will not be getting the call up into the national team. But yeah, I do sort of find interesting like the notion of like, is there a level of player that MLS can recruit that is obviously very good from a big footballing nation? They like it here enough, they play here enough to sort of stay in it for the long haul, but they're not quite good enough for their blue blood national team, and this might be a path in the future. I guess Darlington Nagbe was sort of the last example, who was eligible for Liberia and ended up playing for the U.S., but I don't know. I don't know sort of what the future of this is. This is such a rare case, and this particular skill set is such a rare case. I'm fascinated to see, Copa America next year. Is Lucho Acosta going to be the American super sub that comes off the bench and changes things? That would be insane. And let's remind the listener as well, this is a player that was like on the 1 yard line of going to Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah.
After that big season that he had with DC United, he almost went to PSG and played under Thomas Tuchel. So this is a player with a significant pedigree.
Totally. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. That was like a disaster. He was like devastated when that deal didn't go through.
Yeah.
So
and that was legit on the 1 yard line.
Okay. We're talking U.S. men's national team. As you're watching this or listening to this, the U.S.-Mexico game at the Nations League semifinal has probably already happened. But this, so we can predict. I don't know exactly what to expect. I would assume I slightly favor the U.S. team just because Mexico are a little bit more disarray, but it's also U.S. has the issue with their manager. They had Anthony Hudson, and he bounced for a Qatari team, and then now we have BJ. Is it Callahan?
Callahan. Yeah. So should we record two versions of this then? All right. So I'll do like a 10-second recap of the game.
Okay.
Either way. All right. Here we go. Folarin Balogun scored a hat-trick on his debut. This is insane. What a performance for the United States. They beat Mexico yet again. The U.S. are Mexico's daddies. All right. So that's version one. Number two. Man, the U.S. program waited so long to hire a manager, and it's cost them at this Nations League. Losing to Mexico, we were in control of this rivalry, and we let it slip away. This is terrible. What has the U.S. program done?
This is all right. Well,
there you go. All right, so producer Mike, put the better version of it in the podcast, and we'll be fine.
I got to applaud because Witty did not write anything, wasn't prepared, but he has. I mean, it is. You got it on lock. It was great work. I was gonna include like I can't believe Walker Zimmerman contributed 7 own goals. What a ridiculous game!
Oh man, you figure they would have taken him off after 2. I do that sometimes. So sometimes when we rehearse for MLS season pass, we'll be like, all right, let's do the halftime segment now. Because we have like an intro, like we did one where like we tossed into a piece, and we came out of the piece, and when it's some messy B-roll, so like they'll be like, all right, so bring us into halftime. Be like, all right, here we go, 3, 2, 1. New England Revolution 7, Inter Miami 5 here at Gillette Stadium. It's been an extraordinary game this week, blah blah blah, and then like you go into whatever rehearsed piece we have to get to. So
amazing. Okay, so the only news in regards to this to Nations League that I really want to talk about is just Gregg Berhalter sort of being in the news again, because obviously there is a search for a manager. We had heard
at Club America.
Yeah, I know, right? They need a manager too. But that was also kind of wild to see Gregg Berhalter, just to see an American manager in contention to manage at such a huge club in Mexico. But it looks like that isn't happening, because I think Greg is holding out hope that he still has a real opportunity to coach the U.S. men's national team again. And we've seen comments from obviously Christian Pulisic, who has been very pretty straightforward, and said like, hey, I'd be fine if Greg came back. There was somebody else, I think it was Tim Weah, kind of saying that, but clearly it would upset a lot of people if he does come back, but it doesn't seem like it'll upset everyone but the players. Is that a good enough reason, especially after the U.S. Soccer hires a sporting director, does a bunch of interviews, and then if we go right back to Berhalter, did we even need to hire that guy? You know what I mean? It feels a little bit weird.
Yeah. It would be, what was the point of all of this? Not only in terms of hiring a sporting director and going through what you've gone through, but also going through 2 summer tournaments where you can make legitimate inroads because you're playing competitive games against Mexico, potentially against Canada, and some of the other big CONCACAF nations, and you're not really building towards something. BJ Callahan and Anthony Hudson were sort of doing reasonable facsimiles of Berhalter. They haven't really changed up the system that dramatically. They haven't really changed up the personnel that dramatically. We didn't see them come in and go, all right, well, clearly what Gregg was doing was wrong, so let's try something else. And so why waste your time on worse versions of the Berhalter system to then bring him back when he could have just been building on what he had built? Because I do think there's a certain amount of how much did Gregg Berhalter actually get to implement and do over the course of his time, and how much was he readjusting off the back of the personnel that he had? And so there's still, it's not like Gregg Berhalter's team at the World Cup was a finished article. Right. It wasn't all right, this is my final essay. No, this is that. Those are his midterms, theoretically. So I do think that Berhalter could have more work to do. I am definitely I think I'm probably in the 1 percentile of positivity when it comes to Gregg Berhalter, because I don't think he did a bad job. I think he actually did a very good job. And I wouldn't be completely bothered if he came back. That for me, that turns me into the 1%, because there's this vitriol, and I don't understand where it comes from, because his peers, I think, said a lot of glowing things about Gregg Berhalter. His players have said a lot of glowing things about Gregg Berhalter. And I think there was an interesting quote this week from Valérien Balogun, talking about sort of the environment that he stepped into. And he said he felt almost humbled to walk into a group that likes each other so much. Oh. And I thought it's really interesting that they have built a genuine culture that people want to be a part of at U.S. Soccer. And I think Gregg Berhalter deserves some credit. That being said, I'm sort of an absolutist about international managers getting 1 World Cup cycle, and then it's another new set of ideas. And I'm really intrigued by the idea of Patrick Vieira being the U.S. men's national team manager. I'm sure as an NYCFC fan, you are well aware of his attributes as a manager. I think he's a very good coach. I think he has kind of the perfect pedigree and experience of a manager that you want to step into a national team. He's obviously interested in the job. It was reported by ESPN this week that he's interested in this job and has interviewed for the job. He would be my pick right now. But if Gregg Berhalter came back, I would not be devastated. Yeah. Whereas I think a lot of fans would, and the vitriol would continue, when I honestly don't think that there's a ton of basis for it, other than people are still mad about how he was hired when there's been a mountain of evidence to prove that he's up for the job. He won the Nations League the first time. He won the Gold Cup. He beat Mexico 3 times in a year, qualified the U.S. for the World Cup, got them out of that group, turned in really good performances at that World Cup. I think he did a solid B-plus job in charge of the national team. I wouldn't say it was perfect, but he was a solid B-plus in my view. And people, I think, are just sort of hanging on to their negative perceptions of him from the start, or when he was overly insistent on playing with Will Trapp in midfield, or overly insistent on certain players that you've held on to this for a while. Let it go, man. It wasn't that bad. It won't be that bad.
I agree. Yeah, dude. I mean, it's just there's a lot of just straight up even when I was interviewing Tim Ream, and and even talking to him about I asked him what he sort of regretted about how they played against the Netherlands at the World Cup, and he was straight up. He was just I did not think that they would just let us have the ball like that, and it's one of those things where the Netherlands are very, very good. If Gregg and the U.S. win that game, do people change their tone on how they feel about it?
Yeah, if Christian Pulisic scores that chance in the first 5 minutes of the game, what conversation are we having right now?
Yeah. So
maybe they go on to lose 3-1 anyway, but I was a little bit afraid going into that World Cup. I underestimated the U.S. just because I have a few friends in my life that are very negative about Gregg Berhalter and very negative about the U.S. and I was sort of just don't embarrass us. And I left that World Cup incredibly proud of the performance that the U.S. turned in. And look, maybe they should have beat the Netherlands, and at some point they've got to take the step where they believe that they can beat a team of that quality and go out and do it in a knockout round. And they did it in 2002, but they haven't done it since. Yeah. And I do think that eventually the U.S. has to raise its standards above. Oh, we turned in a great performance, guys. And if you think that time is now, fair enough. Like I won't completely disagree with you. I think the U.S. has a certain level of talent, but I did not watch the U.S. at the World Cup and think that another manager could have taken them to another step beyond where they were, or that they were embarrassing, or that they were bad. I thought the U.S. was on the whole very good at the World Cup.
100% agree. Well, we'll see how how this U.S.-Mexico game turns out. But let's wrap up the show with our final segment. We got to bring in Miguelito. That is Mike Malley's. We Latinofy our producer. Good. So Miguelito,
Miguelito, who's got a job on to edit this podcast.
Miguelito, we call him Miguelito Maye. Okay.
If I guess in the spirit of Messi, should we make him Mache?
Mache, okay. He's a Cuban shortstop out of Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, we're Argentiniizing his name. I'm calling him Mache.
Okay, perfect. But we want to build a little MLS parlay. So Miguelito, what are you picking for our parlay this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting, guys. We have Witty here, so we got to do a little Thursday Thunder ripoff from Levitard Show, honestly. Also exciting, this might be the first time you guys can see me. Can see my beautiful face now, potentially.
Wow.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, back to the MLS parlay. We're going to do a little parlay for the people. I guess we'll each just go around, pick one leg. My first one I got is Sporting KC versus LAFC. This pick is honestly mostly based just from anger on betting on LAFC the past few weeks and them not winning. So now I'm just like, I'm mad. So I got to go against my guys. Shout out to Cavincho, obviously. But Sporting KC has also been great. Alan Pulido looks like, the guy that we thought he really was supposed to be. So Dave? I'm taking Sporting KC plus 155 on the money line.
Okay.
I'm calling that game, so I can't offer a pick on it. I can only give you a key to the game, like Kirk Herbstreit on College Game Day, and say that Sporting Kansas City, healthy, LAFC, not. Yeah, and also missing Denny Bouanga away on international duty. That's a huge one. No Jose Cifuentes either. And on Wednesday night when they lost to Houston, sorry, I'm making noise now. So on Wednesday night when they lost to Houston, playing kind of a makeshift back four didn't really work. And I think some of the younger players in that team, Bogusz and Buke in particular, haven't really fully integrated yet. So they're still very much finding their way. So I can't give a pick, but key to the game there.
Okay. Did you give your pick for your game? Oh,
no, I've not given the pick yet. I can give it now.
Go for it.
So I was just there. I've my second home. I live in Miami. My second home is Foxborough, Massachusetts. I've been to New England quite a bit this season. They're home with Orlando City. I think there's something about the way that again, we talked about home field advantage of playing on the baseball stadium. I think New England sort of know how to navigate their turf pretty well. Carlos Gil is finding form. Gustavo Bo is back and healthy. I think New England can go on a little bit of a run here, particularly when they get fully healthy, getting Brandon Bye back, getting Henry Kessler back at some point. So I'm going to go for New England. They're minus 125 at home against Orlando City. I'll go for the Revs.
Okay. My pick, I'm going to go the San Jose Portland. San Jose's at home against Portland. Portland still doesn't. They haven't really figured out what they sort of want to look like this season. Kind of up and down year, but San Jose with Bobasi and Espinoza just playing incredibly confidently. So I think San Jose wins. I don't know what the line is here.
Yeah, I got your odds for you. San Jose is plus 105 on the money line. So we got the three legs again. New England Revolution minus 125, Sporting KC plus 155. San Jose plus 105 combines to a plus 840 parlay. So you bet 10, you're winning 84. Pretty solid odds. Okay. I actually like this. I'm going to put this in myself. Right. I'm not going to lie for this weekend. Quick let's see how we do.
Or little tidbit. I've played soccer with Jeremy Ebobisi's brother.
Wow.
Yeah, he
There you go.
lives in Brooklyn. I played soccer with him.
Was he playing for the Democrats or the Republicans?
He was an independent. I'm like, dude, you gotta pick a side. This is not the time. Okay, don't be Ralph Nader on the pitch. You know.
By the way, I have a tidbit. San Jose, 6 wins, 2 draws, 0 losses at home this year. Very good home team.
Do it.
There
I'll
you
do
go.
it. Okay. Witty. Miguelito, thank you so much for the contribution. I don't know what image I'm looking at. I'm sure it's hilarious. But Witty, thank you so much for joining me, man. This has been an absolute honor. Honor to work with you. I'm sure you'll be back on soon. You said you're going to be calling which game this weekend?
Kansas City, LAFC.
Okay.
Saturday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, MLS Season Pass. I will also echo it has been an honor from my standpoint to be on with you and all of the repairmen that have been in your home in the last hour.
They all get a guest credit on IMDb, bro. They all everybody. This has been a wild episode. I don't know what this edit is gonna look like, but if you want to hear the uncut version on Patreon, go to patreon.com/soccercooligans because this was a wild one. But thank you for powering through with me. I really, really appreciate it. Everybody, we'll be back on Monday evening or Tuesday morning, whenever you download the podcast. But we have a really fun interview with Maria Sanchez of the Houston Dash in the NWSL. It was really, really dope. So I'm excited for you to hear that. As always, follow us everywhere at Soccer Cooligans. Follow me at Chris Polanco on Twitter, at Christian_Polanco on Instagram. And Witty, where can people follow you?
At Chris Wittyngham on all social platforms. I've unified my handle. So if you search Chris Witty, Witty, it should come up in case you can't spell the whole name. So Chris Witty.
Good.
Look it up on Twitter or Instagram.
I've been trying to get Chris Polanco on Instagram, and it's like, I think like a Venezuelan guy that won't give it up. He just doesn't even use the account.
Oh man, I was really circling around at Chris. I'm jealous of people that just have their at first name. And obviously, Chris, I imagine, is probably like Twitter employee number 7 that got that. But like it was inactive for a while, and then Elon came in and swept out all the inactive ones, and somebody jumped on it, and now at Chris appears to be lost forever.
Damn, bro. All right. I mean, I would have taken it too, bro. I got to fight with you for it as well. Chris, is your full name Christopher or Chris? Or okay,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. I'm a Christopher.
I'm a Christian. But yeah.
Christian.
Pa que sepa. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Witty, as always, seriously, really appreciate you. And we'll be back. Everybody, peace. Take care.